You know, it's okay to live a little and be nice to yourself. It's okay. I promise. You have to forgive yourself as well as others, because if you don't, it's a burden that rots you. It doesn't hurt anyone else. Just so you know. Hey, welcome back to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. I just want you guys to know something. There is something really spiritual, I mean, for lack of a better word, for sitting in front of a campfire and letting your thoughts percolate, clearing your mind, being at peace, observing the flame. There's something to that. If you haven't tried it lately, take the time to do that. It's really a delight. I have a game. It was the U.S. Championship in 1963 and 1964. I remember it well. I was 2, 3, maybe I was 3. It was held in New York. Bobby Fischer played Pal Benko for the championship. And now, Fischer won this thing like, 8 times? I mean, he actually got bored of it, which is to our loss. He could have set a world chess record or United States chess record beyond utter belief. He could have won the thing 50 times if he would have stuck around. I mean, that's the tragedy of Fischer, was his paranoia, which is unfortunate. Thank God he played enough chess to beat the Russian chess machine and give us some great games to study, however, right? And he did leave us a nifty little book, Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess. It's a fun little book. You ought to go through it if you can. It's nice. And I will share some ideas from that book with you also. So Fischer's playing white. Typical, he usually played pawn, king, 4. That was his baby. Pawn, king, knight, 3. Benko is going to start with the... he's going to do the perk defense. Fischer puts out the pawn to queen 4, and then the bishop, knight 2, and then the knight to queen, bishop 3, and then we have the pawn to queen 3. And then we have the pawn to bishop 4. So Fischer is grabbing an enormous amount of central space. However, when you put pawns out there, if you can't support them, they can be targets. So let's see what happens here. Knight, king, bishop 3. Immediately hitting the pawn. Now, true, the pawn is covered at this point. And it's a good developing move. He's got the long diagonal for later on in the game here. And then Fischer puts out his other knight. And Benko castles early. It's a quick castle, get the king out of the way type thing. Fischer puts the bishop to queen 3, and he says back then, nowadays, that was considered the best for this particular setup. And Benko comes down with that classic pin on the knight to the queen with the bishop. And he challenges the bishop pretty quick. He says, do it or don't. And so Benko does take the knight, and the queen takes the bishop. Fischer's development at this point, because of the placement of his pieces, is just superior. There is no other way to put this. And we'll see this from here on out. It's incredible. Knight comes out to bishop 3. Benko is not deliberately not developing, however. Benko at this point was at his height too. He was a serious, I mean, he's playing for the U.S. Championship, right? Serious chess player. One more piece. Bishop to the king 3. And then he presses the pawn to the king 4. And this is out of pawn to king 4. Let me not lose my place here. Okay, move 9. Don't forget to remind me it's move 9. This is out of the Profile of a Prodigy, Bobby Fischer, by Frank Brady. Sensational book. This is game 43, starting on page 329, if you have this book. If not, now you know where you can find it. I really don't know the PGN number to this game. You'll have to look that up. I'm getting it out of the book. So anyway, pawn king 4. So it is definitely a center attack. Now, the queen pawn. We've seen so many Alekhine games where Alekhine likes to do a king-side attack, where he will open up the f-file, so he will take the pawn with the f pawn, and that gives him an open file. And his attacks on the king side are just, they're absolutely mouth-watering classics. Watch how Fischer does this. He takes it with the queen pawn. He'll take the pawn with the queen pawn. And then, of course, Benko is going to take the pawn with the pawn, and instead of trading the pawn the second time, Fischer presses the pawn. In Benko's opening, he automatically weakened the king's dark squares by pressing the g-pawn. So Fischer is beginning to hit the king side already. I'm just saying. You know, it's, you know. The threat here is a pawn storm. So if you study this game enough and you recognize this is what your opponent doing, realize what the threat is. The threat is doing this. Pawn knight 4, and then boogieing up against the king, using your pawns as the battering rams and following up with your pieces. And believe me, Fischer has pieces. I mean, they're all lined up and ready to go. So this threat is very real. So I just want to point that out to you. It's what the text says also. By pressing this pawn, Fischer is announcing, guess what? I am really going to mow you over if you're not careful. And this is Pal Benko. I mean, if you study chess at all, look up Pal Benko and play a few of his games. In fact, I have other games of Benko I want to share with you. This is no slouch. So this is a pretty good threat. Well, the pawn does take the pawn. At this point, yeah, there's not a lot of choice. The text says that's his best chance. That's his best chance. They're already talking about, uh-oh, you're in trouble, and we're on move 11 against one of the world's best. So anyway, and now the queen being in such a beautiful position, comes up and takes that pawn. And now look, clearly the extra space. Now this is remarkable because I've actually had some people comment in the comments in some of my way old videos. I can't remember which ones, but they said, you know, you're making such a big thing about the imbalances and you're misreading Jeremy Silman. Pfft, poppycock. I am not misreading Jeremy Silman. Even Alexander Alekin, along with Bobby Fischer, emphasized this principle. When you get space, push for more. That's an imbalance in your favor. Go, man, go, right? It would be the height of ludicrous for Fischer to start worrying about these guys over here. Well, you know, gosh, I don't have any space to maneuver over here. I think I'll calm down what I'm doing, and I think I'll start pushing pawns here and here and here. No, no, your imbalance isn't over here. No, 1,000 times no. This is where the benefit is for you. Go there. Does that make sense? I hope so. It makes sense to the grandmasters. Watch how Bobby Fischer does this. Okay, don't believe me. I'm just a dope anyway. I'm here to stupefy you anyway. I'm lowering your chess rating, sharing what the grandmasters say, according to my critics. So watch how Bobby Fischer manhandles this space principle. Don't listen to me. Watch his game. Yeah. So the queen takes the pawn. The knight comes to queen 5, which is a terrific outpost. Really it is. That's a great shot. But queen comes back down to bishop 2. Yes, he was being threatened, but he is maintaining, watch. Yes, he lost a little space. No, he really did not. He still has this wonderful file, and I pointed out a lot with the Alekin games. I'm going to point it out a lot here with Fischer's games. He also has still access to the H file. The king has castled to this side. Yes, so that's the goal. He still has access to the H file. You gotta start looking at stuff like that when you see it happening. That makes sense? So, that did not hurt him. Knight comes to king 1, bumping down, and now Fischer castles. So he is concerned about his king. He's not just ignoring his king. Knight comes to queen 3. So you can see that he is shifting his knight. He's adjusting his knights a little bit, trying to centralize the knights. He's intending this one right here. So it makes sense that he did the knight moves he did, doesn't it? When you see this, you realize, you know, the guy has made 2 knight moves. He's not really protecting his king, and yet in a way he is. He's come to there and now to there, because now this knight hits this square and this knight hits this square. And the reason that's so important at this point is because Fischer has the open file. From his point of view, his pawn is not in his way, and his queen is in front of his rook on the open file. It's pretty important to try to close that off. That will restrict the power and the movement capabilities of both queen and rook if he can get Fischer to exchange. And then him to exchange. Close the file off. So this is the intent of those 2 knight moves. It makes sense. It's a good plan. He's coming at you. So that's what he wants to do. What does Fischer do? He goes to queen knight 3. Fabulous. He attacks the center. And you go, what? Yeah. Watch. Watch. You go, no, he's coming across the king. True. He pins the bishop to the king. Correct. That's a great tactic. Because now if he can find a way to attack the bishop, he wins the bishop. But look else at what he's hitting. An unsupported pawn. This is why it prevents this. Now Benko can't do that. You see why? That's why. Because the queen is doing two things at once. Okay, so I want to point that out. King comes to rook 1. And queen comes up to knight 4. Once the king is at rook 1, the text says, now Benko can once again pursue pushing the pawn. But Fischer, by coming to knight 4, prevents that move. That is not a good move anymore. So he goes pawn, queen, bishop 3. And the text again says, now Benko possibly is starting to question himself. He's starting to wonder, ooh, do I have the power to do this? Because rather than the text move to here, they're saying that would have been even stronger. So Benko's making a few weak moves. He's being forced out of doing the strong moves he wants, and he's doing lesser good moves. And now queen, rook 5. Here comes the, excuse me, too much apple cider. And no, I didn't mix it with any alcohol. I don't drink alcohol if I can help it. Queen to rook 5, and holy cow, now the attack is on. It's got an exclamation point, because now he's threatening bishop takes the knight, pawn will take the bishop, and then he'll press pawn, king 5. And then the attack is really on. So the middle is really in Bobby Fischer's favor right now. He gets to choose when to pull the trigger to take that knight and change out the middle and press his pawn up. But once Fischer's pawn gets to here, here's an outpost for a knight, and it gets deadly quick. And he has a knight in reserve, boink, boink. Just 2 moves. You see that? So this is a really good attack. Queen comes to king 1, and they have a question mark. They say, oop, what was necessary was the knight to king 3. That's what Benko should have done. That would have been a vastly superior defense to what he actually did do, queen to king 1. That's not gonna help him out at all, and that's why now is the time to pull the trigger and take the knight, and then the pawn has to retake the bishop. You can't just lose a piece in the center without retaliating, but now it leaves Fischer with the option of pushing pawn, king, knight 5. And once, hold on, let me make sure I'm doing this right. You know, I flub up half these videos, and that makes me look like the dork that I really am. Okay, yes, pawn takes the bishop. So, you're here as Fischer. You've got an undeveloped piece. You've got great central control. It's still a contested center, however, right? This rook is undeveloped, but it can come pretty quick into the foray, just like this rook can. What do you do as white? Here's what Fischer did. And it's the most astonishing move for this game. In fact, they commemorated Fischer's U.S. Championship crown with a cake that had all of the chess pieces made in this next position to celebrate Fischer winning. Pow! He puts that rook right in front of the bishop pawn. And now the pawn cannot move in a way of defense. The cake was made with that position, and they celebrated it. That's called an Alekan block. That is a sweet move. That's a lightning bolt out of the blue. That hits you across the jaw, and you're staggering in the ring ready to fall. That is a wickedly fabulous move. So the king comes back up to knight 1. And pawn comes to king 5. Now he can press his pawn. Pawn comes up to king rook 3. And then knight goes to king 2 and he resigns. Hold on. I want to back up. Knight to king 2, pawn to king 3, pawn to king 5. I want to back that up. And then king to knight 1. Okay, I'm going to back this up. So here's the question. Here's the question. Why didn't the pawn take the knight? Because pawn then goes to king 5. See, Benko's idea was he had to stop that pawn from advancing. Pawn went to king 5. Pawn goes to king rook 3 here. And now the rook takes the pawn. Check. And the king has to come over to knight 1. Then the rook goes to rook 8. The bishop takes the rook. And queen goes to rook 7 mate. Whew. That is a brutal way to manhandle Pal Benko. And Bobby Fischer did it well. Let me move all my crap out of the way. So, there's you a spectacular, crisp, clean Fischer machine chess game. And I'm trying to get, I'm playing through several of Bobby Fischer's games. I am really enjoying Alexander Alekhine games, and I'm enjoying showing you them because between these two, Fischer and Alekhine, and Garry Kasparov has some enormously fabulous games. Although it seems to me, and maybe it's because I'm simple-minded, is because Kasparov is much more technically difficult. Alekhine was difficult. Fischer was just crisp. It was clean. He just systematically went to work. And so I'm going to try to get more of Fischer's games in these videos for you too. But eventually I'd love to play through all of Bobby Fischer's, all of Alexander Alekhine's, all of Garry Kasparov's, all of Anatoly Karpov's, all of Viktor Korchnoy's, all of Emanuel Lasker's, all of Magnus Carlsen's, all of Mikhail Botvinnik and Tal and Smyslov, and all of those guys' games. I'm going to have to live to be 175, and I'm honestly trying to, so that I can produce better videos for you. So anyway, there you go. Enjoy the game. Play through this a few times, and look how Fischer did this. It was exceptionally crisp, clean, simple, and yet profound. So if he can do it, we can do it with a lot of practice. So thanks for watching my videos. Be good, do well, have fun. Thanks, and come back for more torture and punishment from the Backyard Professor Chess videos. I will see you in the next video.